I wanna be like you. You'll see it's true. Someone like me can learn to be like someone like you. Oh, that was really off key. Oh, hey, you're here already. So, I'm Amy, and this is the Lolly Life, and today is another episode of trying not to starve to death on good home cooking. And we are going to talk about making hamburger patties, and actually seasoning them too. Our hamburger is 80-20. 80-20. And I generally, when I make hamburgers, I do about 4 or 5 per pound. To start with, I've washed my hands already. I have my hair pulled back. I've done a dance. Dancing before you make hamburgers is very important. Okay, so now we have this, and I like to season my hamburgers with Lipton. There are lots of different ways to season your hamburger for hamburgers, and really any of them is great, fabulous. I would just recommend seasoning it with something. It just makes it a little bit more savory. And this is easy. I have 2 envelopes. I've chopped them open with my lovely little shears. Yeah, shears. I'm not sure why I said shears instead of scissors. I usually do about an envelope to a pound, sometimes an envelope to 2 pounds, somewhere in there. You really just kind of decide for yourself how seasoned you like it. I'm going to dump my envelopes. We're going to be extra seasony today, and we're going to do 2 envelopes for 2.25 pounds. Yeah, so for 2 pounds and a quarter. So here's my seasoning. Water. Not a lot. My goal with this is strictly to get enough water that I can like mix it up with a fork, and it will just be just a little bit liquefied. I could have gotten away with a little bit of less water, but it's fine. Oh wait, before I get my hands dirty, I need wax paper, lots of wax paper. Hamburger on the counter. I cleaned the counters just a moment ago, and so the counters are clean. I find that it's easiest to just work on a counter if you have this, if you have a counter that you can scrub real well. I have a butcher block counter. I would not probably do it on that countertop, but a Formica countertop, absolutely. Oh, actually, I'm gonna pull a little piece off to the side. I'm just going to pour, and because I'm weird, I feel like I have to clean out the cup too. So, yeah, I do that too. That is not a necessary step. That is truly just me being weird step. So, yeah, that's not important. You have to get your hands dirty. That is kind of part of cooking, getting your hands dirty. There are other ways to do it besides this. This is just the fastest and easiest. So I suppose if you put it in a bowl and you had something to stir with, you could eventually stir it in. It would probably take at least twice as much time. So if getting your hands dirty is really bothersome to you, then I would recommend putting it in a bowl and taking twice as much time. But guess what? It's not bothersome to me. So we are just going to do our thing. It's like Play-Doh. I have 2.25 pounds, and like I said, I usually make about 5-ish per pound. You could make 4 per pound, that would be a quarter pound each, but I think 5 is really where I tend to go. And so I'm going to make 11 burgers out of 2.25 pounds. And that means that I need each one to weigh 0.20 something. Now there are multiple ways of doing this. My favorite way of figuring out something is truly just dividing things in half. And so I divide them in half, and so here's half and here's half. I divide those in half, and I divide those in half. And so we're going to take a little piece from each. Like, truly, this is the way that I generally do this, is I just kind of eyeball it. If I make all of the balls first, my burgers tend to be a little bit more equalized as far as their size. And when you're making hamburgers, that actually is important, because if you have one hamburger that is significantly larger than the other hamburgers, it doesn't cook at the same rate. And there's a possibility of not cooking it all the way through when all the other ones are practically burned. And so that's something to keep in mind. You obviously can make some burgers that are larger than other burgers, but you just have to keep in mind that they're going to have to cook longer. I just prefer to have them all be about the same size so that I don't have to think that through. By weighing them on the scale, or weighing a couple of them at least on the scale, I realized that by doing it the way that I had said, dividing it in half again, visually just looking at it until I got about 11 different balls of hamburger, I ended up getting 11 hamburger balls that were equally, or about equally, the same size. So, wah-ha! Now, some people would just make their little hamburger patties and they would just kind of do something like this until they formed it into about a hamburger patty looking kind of thing, and they would say, ta-da, that's good. There's a problem with that. Hamburger, unless it's super, super lean, it shrinks. Like, shrinks. And so, like, whatever size you make this, you can guess that it's gonna shrink by 25 to 50%. Yeah, no joke. And the thicker it is, the less likely you are to have cooked it all the way through. This is my little tip on making hamburgers. I use a dinner plate. It is best to have a dinner plate with some kind of a little ring around it, because it kind of actually keeps the hamburger inside of the circle. One ball, pretty even pressure, and voila. Now, this may look like it is like entirely too large, but once it shrinks, it actually will fit in a hamburger bun perfectly. Like, lovely. Super, super lovely. Really, this is what you're looking for. And if you look at it, it's nice and thin. You can see how thin it is. And so it will cook evenly. The middle isn't going to get left uncooked for part of the time. This is a good hamburger. So then I will just take it and, oh, hold on, move these. Plop it down on my cookie sheet. And if it needs to be shaped anymore, then I will shape it just a tiny bit more. Next, and voila. And try to give it even pressure. And you don't have to push it all the way down. Like, it's not quite touching the counter, but it's getting close. And depending on how thick you decide you want your burgers, you can push it down that much. The only important part is that, or at least to me the important part, is that they are similar in thickness, so they cook the same. They, you know, they're gonna cook in about the same amount of time. And that they are equal thickness, that the thickness of it is equal from the middle to the side, so that when you cook it, it will cook evenly and you are not going to end up with a raw spot in the middle, because you don't want a raw spot in the middle. If you're freezing any of the hamburgers, then you should put 2 layers of wax paper between, because otherwise they stick together in such a way that you can't get them apart. And so 2 layers of wax paper between. If you're making lots of hamburger patties, then the pieces of wax paper that you're using to make the hamburger patties tends to get a little bit worn out, and so you will have to get fresh pieces, or the hamburger's going to start sticking to your wax paper. I actually didn't need new ones. I only did that so that I could show it to you. And so, yeah. When you make your hamburgers like this, it is such a simple job that you could easily assign it to somebody between the ages of 8 and 12, and definitely a teenager. Now we have our seasoned meat. They've been squashed flat so that they cook evenly and you don't end up with raw spots in the middle. They look extra wide, but when you cook them, unless you have like 90 plus, maybe 95% lean ground beef, they are going to shrink significantly, and then you're gonna end up with like all this extra bun around the outside and no burger. Yeah, we don't like that. I don't know anybody who likes that. I really don't like that. And so you have to make the burgers a little bit wider so that when they shrink up, they still fit in your bun. When you're done, you should wipe the counter off with a warm, soapy rag. Toss this one in the laundry. Get a fresh rag. This one doesn't have to be soapy. And rinse it off. And yes, the cleanup is part of making the hamburgers, and part of the reason that the cleanup is part of making the hamburgers is because you don't want to leave that raw meat on the counter, because if somebody were to come along and put something on it, then it could make them sick because of contamination, cross-contamination, those kinds of things. And so make sure that you wipe down the counter afterwards with a rag with hot, warm, soapy water or some kind of a spray cleaner or something. I want to be like you. I wanna walk like you, talk like you, you'll see it's true. Someone like me can learn to be like someone like you. One more time. Actually, I don't want to be you, but I like the song. It is kind of a fun song. And I'll see you next time on A Lolly Life.